Oftentimes, in my experience, even in talking to my peers across the industry, we have tools in our control that are probably having like 30 to 70% overlap of capabilities and detection and data points. None of us are even aware of it because a lot of the security teams are very siloed in what they are focusing on.
Today's guest is Jonathan Poon, Head of Threat and Vulnerability Management at Zoom. Jonathan has spent his career deep in the world of security, but what sets his perspective apart is his focus on what happens beyond the tools. He believes that in today's environment, success in security isn't just about what you know, it's about how well you can align teams, communicate risk, and turn complexity into clarity. In this episode, we unpack why more tooling isn't always the answer, how to simplify without losing visibility, and what it takes to make security actually work across the business. Jonathan, welcome to Patch Me If You Can.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
You came into this conversation with kind of a provocation. On paper, security has never looked stronger, more tools, more telemetry, more AI-powered automation. But you believe that complexity is actually outpacing our ability to understand and control what teams are responsible for. Where are you seeing that gap show up the clearest right now from where you're sitting?
I think one of the biggest signals is actually we are getting so much data points. With or without AI being able to filter a lot of the noise out, there's still way too many signals for humans to actually react to. Whether there's a introduction of additional layers of tooling that can help further refine and reduce the noise. It's also a challenge, right? In that it also further adds complexities, right? And it just creates a lot of operational text for the front-end engineers and the tier 2 engineers to be able to really focus on their workflows to drive things. And an example recently that my team was trying to do was to enhance our threat intel information with our vulnerability information to see, hey, if something is now being discussed on social media, let's just get a quick signal where we have. And then we started to add more and more data points into it. And then we're just replicating what we already have. No, that's not the outcome that we want. It's just too much noise. And then we decided to just filter it back to that initial intent to give us a yay or nay, and then we can then kick off our workflows. So that was a very good realization for myself personally, as well as some of my peers. Go, hey, instead of going way too deep, let's just step back and figure out what's truly needed and get the right signals to then go drive the right triggers.
Yeah. Would you say there's kind of a law of diminishing returns when it comes to adding additional data points and tooling into your team's workflow? Like, what's the methodology that you use when it comes to figuring out if it makes sense to introduce a new tool or a new data feed?
We have tried, in my experience, we have tried leveraging multiple tools on top of the baseline tool sets that we have. And I guess the biggest challenge has always been about during the sales pitch and demos, everything is easy to integrate, and all the data is all assumed to be clean and things like that. But we all know in reality, CMDBs in the world is never clean, right? It's always outdated and to varying degrees. A lot of the tool sets, the assumption of quality of data that isn't there actually just cause even more friction, right? Where it's like, okay, do we fix it in CMDB, or do we fix it in the tool, or do we fix it in our baseline scanning tool? That is one of those things where it's like we find that sometimes it's easier, and we have done that in my last couple of teams where we ended up just building a tool by ourselves because we know the problem statement, we understand the quality of the data that we have or do not have, and we're able to work with the right teams to get it done versus the trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Like you just couldn't get it to work. And having a couple of lessons learned and wasted investments on those, yeah, that's kind of where we ended up with.
Yeah, I think from my experience, it can be really hard to implement a tool, to fold it into a stack that is already running pretty smoothly, because there's always sharp edges during the implementation phase. I think a lot of leaders that are maybe less mature, they always go to tooling as the answer. Why can't you do this today? Why can't why don't you have this capability? Well, we need to get this tool and that tool. It's not always the case. In fact, typically it's not the case. Outside of the question of tooling and what the right tools are and the right tools to fold into your stack, what components of a strong security program that when you think about kind of the bigger picture, what are some of the components of a strong security program that leadership overlooks or commonly kind of underinvests in?
I can tell at least two angles. One is really about actually understanding what your current stack provides. And in my experience, even in talking to my peers across the industry, we have tools in our control that are probably having like 30 to 70% overlap of capabilities and detection and data points. None of us are even aware of it because a lot of the security teams are very siloed in what they are focusing on. I think that's one of the biggest gap where there's no, I guess maybe like a data oversight committee or whatever. It's probably someone's going to just immediately hang up on the podcast now. But having a team that can actually look across all the tooling, what are the data that we have, and being able to help support whatever security or engineering scenarios, it's probably an exercise that a lot of companies do not put investment in. The other thing is also with all the information that we have, and again, that's kind of like my soapbox topic is we have all the data, we have all the information. If we can't even convince someone to go do something, then again, it's kind of pointless. So being able to find the right tooling, and again, I think more and more the tooling these days are getting better because again, leveraging AI to translate a vulnerability to a risk, to a dollar amount, to asset impact, that makes it easier for security practitioners to actually communicate in the right frequency to the right people.
I'd love to go back to something that you just said. What was it you referred to it as the data oversight committee? Was that what you called it?
Yeah.
I think typically, you made the joke. Folks are probably hanging up now as we speak because they hear committee and that it's one less thing that they want to have to do. It's not sexy, right? But the reality is that aligning people within the business is sometimes the biggest missing piece. For folks that are listening that are maybe saying, yes, like we know that the data probably exists in our organization. We don't know where it lives. We don't know who owns it. We don't know a lot of things. You don't know what you don't know. What's maybe a starting point that they can start from to build out this committee? What's the makeup of a committee like this typically look like? How can someone be successful in knowing what they don't know?
I think one of the best ways is to start from what you know, right? For each team, right? We all know what our top 10, top 20 use cases of data that we need to do our job. From those scenarios, call out what are the key data sets that we need, right? Share it across the security team and go, hey, I have these 20 scenarios. 15 of them, I know I have 100% of the data that I need. 5 scenarios that I need certain data that I do not know where to get, right? And being able to share that with one another is a great way to start that conversation. Oh, hey, I have this in Splunk or I have this in Elasticsearch. Through another tool that someone's sent this data into, you can grab this and correlate with your data. Great. Then we can have those conversations to go, oh, someone's looking for installation patches of a certain utility, and if the tooling is not installed in the proper manner, how do we are able to find it? And so again, we have creative ways to go get it from various teams. So being able to go, okay, are these your key scenarios? Let's work together, let's get the data, and ideally make it an automated feed in the future. Those has been ways that we at least table up the starting conversation, and then we kind of see like, okay, where are the absolute gaps that none of our teams are aware we have the data for, and is that truly something that we want to consider to get another tooling to gather the data, or is something that we want to just build on our own?
You said before you came on that you've seen situations where someone has had extreme strength in the technical knowledge department, but that they've maybe been weaker in the relationship management / alignment department. When you think about someone who's really technically brilliant, but they need to go build this kind of alignment in the business, they need to have, these, they'll go have these conversations with other folks in the business. What are the kind of skills that they need to work on to make the difference, and to go from someone who's technically brilliant to also someone who is able to develop that human side and build relationships in the business to make sure that work is able to actually get done?
I think it's really important to build empathy skills to firstly to understand from the recipient's perspective how you say something to make them care about it, right? If you're just screaming 0 days and remote exploitable vulnerabilities, and to them they're like, you're just talking random characters above my head. I do not understand what that means. Versus the, hey, this is gonna cause your product revenue to get impacted, your product reputation to get impacted. Coming up with ways that will make them feel that, hey, yeah, this is important for them to go focus on. As well as being able to explain a muscle that allows one to actually be able to speak at different frequencies to different levels or different segments of the company. Right, speaking to a PM on engineering is going to be different when you're speaking to the sales and marketing leads, right? But again, chances are those are the kind of teams that we typically have to work with in our day-to-day work as well. I think it's important to build up communication skills, the empathy skills, as well as also being able to actually recognize that just having the technical skills itself is not enough, right? It's like, yes, you can be on your soapbox and you're screaming and shouting, but if no one else is actually listening at all, which is the worst case scenario, what's the worth of your skills, right? So, and I've seen that myself early in the career. So I've gone through that journey, that learning journey, the painful learning journey, and I've seen really talented engineers on soapboxes, and I'll always be like, "Can I have a chat with you after this call?"
And what do you tell them?
I'll share with them my experience. Like, hey, I used to be the one that was like knocking my head against the wall, trying to help protect, kind of like protect the supply chain security when that phrase wasn't even invented yet, but wasn't able to communicate in the right way. At least, and for my own experience, it was a very experienced program manager that again took me to one side. They say, hey, I see that you are really struggling to communicate. Why don't you, shadow me for a couple of weeks, see how I'm communicating all our issues and concerns, and see whether you can learn from it. And I did. And since then, I no longer have to like jump on the soapbox. I'll try to say things as relaxed as I can, try to make sure people can understand it, as well as verifying that they do understand it before we move forward. So, and sharing those pointers with all the newer engineers that I get to work with throughout the years. What really energized me is also oftentimes they will connect with me, whether on LinkedIn or just send me a text like, "Hey, I'm doing really well. Your pointers, I'm still doing it day by day, and this is getting me access to even more and more challenging work." Which is all we want to do, right? We just want to tackle bigger challenges to fulfill our days.
That's awesome. No, I love stories like that where someone that was more experienced and had wisdom that someone else didn't came in and takes them under their wing and helps mentor them, even if just for a couple weeks, and then you change that person's trajectory exponentially. That's such a
Yeah.
cool story. One of the things that you had also mentioned was curiosity and the importance of curiosity. In many ways, it's more valuable than depth in a single tool or tool set. How do you instill that in your team? What are some of the ways that you encourage folks to be curious without tipping into trend chasing? Because that can be really easy to mistake curiosity for just following the following the trend and miss the thing that no one's looking at. How do you keep folks on your team exploration focused?
So I do share how I'm keeping myself at pace with all the industry developments and startups and whatnot. So I do share all my information sources with them, and I do share with them in terms of I'm actually reading all this, and here's my takeaways. And yes, we know here's the things that we put on our radar. We're not going to work on it, but let's put it on the radar. It's something that we should start to think about. Or here are the hottest issues right now, and it's going to be significantly easier to do it these days with AI. Right, a notebook LLM, you just grab a bunch of papers and stuff and let it summarize for you. But prior to that, I was already doing that, reading a lot of papers, a lot of white papers, customer success stories, checking with peers as well, right? So like, hey, what are you guys using? How's the happiness level on your side? It's something we're thinking of, and like hearing whatever they say is like multiple times better than whatever the sales folks are going to tell us. The other thing is also the technology space is so big, whether it's security, whether it's AI, right? Finding a couple of niches and feeling comfortable to just focus on it, and maybe letting the rest of the team go focus on other niches, right? So like for me, really into vulnerability management, AI, especially around security, whether it's also around risk-based prioritization. I will try to build my own understanding on how different tooling and providers are doing their solutions, and also discuss with my principal engineers about it. And again, assessing where our gaps are. Do we need to start look at things, or do we not? And just keep on. Again, it's more of I continue to share that every week I'm learning new things. Recently, our team has been showing off to one another what we're doing with AI, whether it's our internal AI or all the other AI providers out there. It's like, hey, there's this funky cool stuff that we can do that save us. Like this used to take us 3 weeks to prepare a deck. Now it's done. As we are talking, and it helps people to go, hey, there's really a lot more things that we can learn, and it also facilitates the different ways people learn. For me, is I like to read and I like to see visual demos, because those two ends will allow me to just pick things up very, very quickly, while others might really need to sit down, try it hands-on, and try things out. I rarely have to do hands-on. Um, but yeah, it's just the curious nature of asking people that even if folks are sharing links and whatnot, I would also love to go click through it. Hey, what? No, this is interesting. Who can I talk to? So it allows me to also build my network, and also to actually better understand why people feel certain things are important out there right now.
Yeah, we just went through a hackathon here internally, and there were 30 projects in total, most of them AI projects that individuals or teams worked on. And it's amazing when people get hands on, when you create the time for them to focus, even just for 2 days, on building something and pushing the limits on what they think is possible and going and researching. It's a total game changer. That's really where a lot of the unlocks come from, which is exactly what you're saying, right? Encouraging folks to not just go and learn, but to come back and share. That's where you really get those compounding effects when you have folks sharing with the team. That's great.
As leaders, one of the things I share with fellow leaders is we also need to give our team members the room to fail, right? Because again, right now, this is like another brand new Wild Wild West. They try some new algorithm, they try some new prompts, and things work for a while and it breaks. That's fine. We learn and we move forward, right? But don't have the fear of trying new things or learning new things.
Love that. One of the big themes of this show is that the patch is just the start. Once you move from a tool heavy model, like we've talked about, tools aren't always necessarily the answer. Once you move from that to a reality that's more built around alignment and clarity and focusing on the human side of the work that we do, what does that actually unlock? Well, what are the kinds of work that become possible that wasn't before? I'm guessing one of the things that unlocks is more time for curiosity and creativity and discovery. But what are the some of the things internally that unlocks?
Well, it builds stronger alignment. right? Because again, it's like, hey, if a security team is not hammering on engineering, go, hey, go patch, go patch, go fix, go fix. But it's like, hey, we notice you have this class of problems or this class of vulnerabilities that we believe comes through from a gap in your processes. Why don't you go fix the process one time so that we don't have to hound you for the rest of your life, every single week, every single month, and showing them the trade-off. Because again, DevOps engineering cycles are expensive, product engineering cycles are expensive, right? So it's like, hey, we want to help you save your time, and we believe this is one of the causes of why we're nagging at you every week, right? And being able to communicate at that level, making them understand, and once they do try those things out and fix it and go, hey, yeah, you guys are right. You are really no longer harassing us on a monthly basis. And yeah, our metrics now looks cleaner as well, which is a great thing for those organizations too. So it helps build that positive cycle where again it builds the trust, it builds the alignment. We are helping the company get more bandwidth to do more important stuff than just rebooting machines and whatnot. And it again frees up that that space for us to even align even longer. So one of the things that we often will also talk about is also about finding more signals that we have at the tail end. I always consider TVM to be at the tail end, almost like a soccer team's goalkeeper, right? If everyone expects the goalkeeper to prevent a goal from being scored, your coach is bad, your team is bad, right? But it's like, hey, let's strengthen all the roles on the pitch and make sure that everyone has a strong role to play and know each of their roles, why it matters. And us being able to find the right data points again, just to echo back and share that information, maybe not. It could also just be on our own security engineering processes that might have some gaps, right? Being able to showcase that to help one another team to also improve has always been a massive improvement too. We're not pointing out that they fail, but hey, this help us reduce noise for everyone. Let's find a way to get this done together. And I always like to offer up our software engineers resources to help facilitate that as well. So it's like, hey, we find this problem. We can also offer, part of the solution as well. So it's not just pointing fingers and say, you guys go fix it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Jonathan, we always like to close the show by asking our guests this one last question. If you could instantly patch something in your world, personal or work related, what would it be?
I want to patch success clarity. Yeah, like oftentimes, like the biggest struggles has always been the success measure, the KRIs, the OKRs for different teams aren't the same. But in reality, I think every single day, no one goes to work to go, hey, I'm going to piss off security and not do all this work. It's because they have more urgent schedules to deliver features that maybe an executive will be announcing in a conference keynote, things like this. So being able to actually understand and have easy access to that clarity is important. And that's the hard problem to solve. We can always say, oh, we assume with positive intent, but it's also hard where it's like, hey, if there's so many moving landscape right now, and again, AI speed is just crazy. Enjoy the energy that this whole momentum is creating, but it's also very scary to see as well. So it's like, yes, finding a way to have that clarity and making it very easily I would say easily understandable by all organizations and all roles. That's probably my dream patch.
That's a good one. Goal alignment, setting goals for a year, much less several years. With AI and how quickly everything's moving, it feels like a daunting process. How could you know where we're going to be a year from now, much less a couple months from now, right?
No, yeah.
Things continue
At
at the
this
rate
point, it's like, yeah, it's
we're-
impossible. Impossible. One of my friends also recently mentioned, hey, look, recently there's been a bunch of CEOs that are voluntarily stepping down because they can't see past the next 12 to 18 months.
Mhm.
And if folks at that level can't see ahead, yeah, it's gonna be a craziness for us as well.
Yeah, interesting times ahead.
Yeah.
Well, big thanks to you, Jonathan, for joining us on this episode of Patch Me If You Can, and for sharing what it looks like to stop reacting and start architecting and building out human teams that are working with other teams in more effective ways. If you like this episode, hit follow and share it with someone who's ready to lead IT and security from the front. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for the opportunity to be on the show.
Great having you.